building should attain its climax amid the festal scenes of harvesting. For as a man soweth, so shall he reap. So is it with nations.
That's the ocean, the ocean.
Our pioneers, in their foresight, planted the seeds of industries most suited to our soil and climate. Those who came after labored zealously to propagate and glorify their work. Today, we are reaping the harvest of this wisdom and carrying on the traditions that have made the nation mighty. The amazing transformation of a country of wild bushland into a highly productive, developed commonwealth in the brief span of 150 years has no parallel in history. Nor could we today be harvesting the benefits of a great past were it not for the fact that our nation builders were imbued with sublime patriotism, so splendidly expressed in the words of Pharaoh.
It is my objective that Australia will not only take her place among the weak growing nations, but will lead the world in standards of quality. It's nice to see you again.
It's been good night.
One of the central features of racism, of any sort, is the way that we turn people who are different to us into things. We turn cultures into objects. And of course, that's not reality. In reality, people are very complex beings. So when we say things like Asians are bad drivers, or Chinese are good at maths, or Aborigines are lazy, or Anglos don't look after their family, or Indians are rude. When we make statements like that, what we're doing is making an assumption that their culture is a single thing.
Sometimes in uni, right, you need to do the assignment, group assignment. People may not want to do with you because you're Chinese.
So we're kind of emptying all the kind of complexity out of a culture, all the differences that exist within a culture, and we're using it to explain the behaviour of a group of people.
Maybe they try to stare at you.
I think the more culture it is in one country, the more chance racism can occur.
I think they are all very nice and friendly, but sometimes they're a bit racist.
Certainly I remember walking down a street in Shanghai many years ago when I was travelling around China. And a young child kind of stopped in the middle of the street and looked at me, pointed and said, "Quiet." And it wasn't so much the word.
Actually, I have witnessed some racism, like openly on public transport.
The look of fear and suspicion in the child's eyes that here I was, an outsider and somebody to be worried about, to be scared of, to be suspicious of.
Yeah, I grew up in the country in Australia in a place called Gundagai, which is about 4 hours from Sydney towards Melbourne. And in Year 5 we had some Chinese kids come to our school for the first time because their dad stopped a Chinese restaurant in the area. His name was Sunny, the guy in my year, and during a game of poison ball, which was pretty common there I guess, he fell over and he got stumped on the face by one of my mates and he bled everywhere, and that was probably the most overt incident of racism that I've ever encountered. He was a child coming armed with a whole range of perceptions of people who were different to him, and just an automatic response on his part.
Well, when I was growing up, I was teased a lot by white kids saying I was Asian kids saying I was white, and it caused me a bit of stress when I was young, but over the years I've come to accept it and I'm fine with it now.
So that was kind of an interesting moment for me, and it wasn't the first moment I had in China or in other parts of Asia where people were just amazed by, surprised by, and suspicious of my difference.
million Barbara Porritt and migrant 1,000,001 husband Dennis arrive in Melbourne.
It's very clear that racism is not simply a question of Australia's past, but is an ongoing part of its present and will continue into its future. That's partly because the settlement of Australia as a kind of a frontier colonial country was predicated on the disposition of an existing group of people. So it was predicated on the unequal distribution of power, resources, and opportunities between two groups of people.
We must be forming in Asian countries. The picture of white Australia.
Forming? Well, we can't help that. We can't control other countries. All out the same as we did in Queensland. Keep them out. Keep all the niggers out. Japs and everybody else. Why? Well, we don't want them.
You consider you're superior to the coloured people?
No, I don't know about that, but I do know this.
But Australia is also a migrant nation. It's been since the first arrival of Europeans over 200 years ago. It's existed and grown because of its migrant population.
Literally mobbed the Yorkshire lass. And Immigration Minister Holt gives an official welcome. It's a big moment for the young couple who've been married only a few weeks. What do they feel like now they're here? Barbara says it neatly.
You know, Dennis and I didn't expect a welcome like this, but we feel that it's not only for us, but for the 1 million new people. I'm very happy to have been chosen to represent these people, but I'm frightened too. But I expect that most migrants feel like myself when they first come, and I guess that it won't last for long in happy Australia.
But there's another point that I think is really crucial to the critical, the understanding of racism, and that is that it's not just about cultural difference, because involved in racism is always an element of power. So, and this is really important. If we think, I'll give you a good example. Say James Packer is walking down the street of Surrey Hills, and he sees a homeless Indigenous person in the gutter. And the homeless Indigenous person looks up at James Packer and says, "You white so-and-so, get out of my way." We could say he's expressing a racist attitude, but it has no consequences. James Packer will just continue to walk on his way and continue to be a rich, powerful man. But if James Packer turns to that man and says, "Well, I'm not going to give you a job," then that has powerful consequences. So racism is not just about attitudes based on perceptions of people's cultural or racial differences. It's also about the consequences, the contexts in which those attitudes take place. To combat racism in Australian society, we need to create a culture in which people are accepted for what they are.
How do you think those type of attitudes can be changed?
Can't be forced on the people. They have to change for themselves.
We need to create a culture that knows that an alien is someone from another planet, not another country. That Muslim is not equal terrorist, and that both people are still people.
I think just more respect and trying to understand different cultures.
I think that it's better to have schools to educate people.
Maybe the teachers or something have some thought of positive knowledge.
Some years ago I remember having a conversation with a relative of mine from a country town in New South Wales who complained that the Muslims were taking over. Now I had a look around in her country town, not a Muslim inside. And it's really important to actually have a very kind of a rational, cool, calm examination of the patterns of migration to Australia and the extent to which particular groups have come to Australia or not.
I think it seriously has to come up from the grassroots level through an educational system that is instituted by the federal government, because that way it is common across all states and there's no discrepancy between the policy.
We need young people to start a new discussion, creating a culture of change, a culture of critical understanding, a culture of respect, and a culture of solidarity.
Thank you so much for playing my game.